In 1963, a man in central Turkey was renovating his home. He knocked down a wall in the back of his house, and behind it was a passage. The passage led to a room. The room led to a stair. The stair led down into the dark. And it did not stop. Beneath that ordinary house was a city carved entirely out of rock, descending level after level into the earth, deep enough and vast enough to swallow 20,000 people. The city is called Derinkuyu. It lies beneath the region of Cappadocia. In central Turkey, it plunges roughly 60 meters underground, at least 18 levels of rooms, tunnels, stables, kitchens, chapels, wells, and ventilation shafts. And it is not alone. Cappadocia hides hundreds of underground settlements, and Derinkuyu is connected by tunnel to at least one other underground city kilometers away. So, the questions come fast. Who carved an entire city downward into solid rock? When? And, most of all, what were tens of thousands of people so afraid of that they needed to vanish underground? To understand Derinkuyu, you first have to understand the strange ground it was carved into. Cappadocia sits on a high plateau in central Anatolia, and millions of years ago, this whole region was buried under volcanic ash erupted from great volcanoes that loom on the horizon even today. That ash settled, compacted, and hardened into a rock called tuff. And tuff has a remarkable property. When it is freshly exposed, it is soft enough to carve with simple hand tools, even in places with tools of wood or bone and stone. But once tuff is exposed to air, it slowly hardens. It cures. It becomes tough and durable and stable. So this single rock gives you the perfect building material, easy to dig, and then, over time, strong enough to hold up a city. The people of Cappadocia understood this. For thousands of years, above ground, they carved homes, churches, and entire villages into the standing cones and cliffs of tuff. And below ground, they did something far more ambitious. They dug down, they hollowed out chambers, then tunnels connecting the chambers, then stairs connecting the levels, carving over generations a hidden world beneath the visible one. Derinkuyu is the deepest and most complete of those hidden worlds we have found. Now we hit the hardest question about Derinkuyu, and it is a genuinely hard one. When was it dug? And the honest answer is that we are not certain, because here is the problem with dating a hole. A normal archaeological site builds upward in layers, each generation leaving a stratum you can date in sequence. But Derinkuyu was carved by removing rock. There are no construction layers. The act of digging erases the evidence of when the digging happened. What we can say is this: Derinkuyu was very heavily used in well-documented historical periods, particularly by early Christian communities over 1,000 years ago, who expanded it dramatically and used it to shelter from persecution and from raids. We find their chapels carved into the rock, their crosses, their living spaces. That use is certain, but, and this is the contested part, those Christian communities may not have been the original diggers. They may have inherited something far older and simply enlarged it. So who were the original diggers? There are two leading candidates, and both are ancient. One possibility points to the Phrygians, an Iron Age people, who controlled this region well over 2,500 years ago, and who were known as skilled workers of rock. Another possibility reaches back even further, suggesting the first cuttings could date to the time of the Hittites, a great Bronze Age empire that ruled Anatolia more than 3,000 years ago. There are even hints in old texts of Anatolian peoples using underground refuges in that deep era. What is clear is that Derinkuyu is not the work of a single generation. It is a project that may span thousands of years. Let's go down into it, because the layout of Derinkuyu is not random. Every feature of this place was designed around a single, overriding purpose: to let a large population vanish underground and survive there, hidden for as long as the danger lasted. Start with the famous feature: the doors. At key points along the tunnels, the builders carved enormous circular stone discs, great rolling doors, like millstones, some weighing hundreds of kilograms. These doors could be rolled across a passage from the inside, and, crucially, only from the inside. Once a rolling door was in place, it sealed a level completely. An attacker in the tunnel could not move it, could not get a grip on it, could not get past it. Each level of Derinkuyu could be locked off independently, turning the whole city into a series of sealable traps. Now, the problem of breathing. You cannot hide 20,000 people 60 meters underground without air. And here is where Derinkuyu becomes a work of genius. The city is threaded with more than 50 vertical ventilation shafts, some plunging the full depth of the city, that draw fresh air down from the surface and circulate it through every level. The system works so well that even the deepest chambers stay breathable, and many of those shafts served double duty, reaching groundwater far below, functioning as wells. Critically, those wells could be sealed off from the surface, so an enemy above could not poison the water. And then there is the sheer completeness of it. Derinkuyu is not a panic room. It is a functioning city. There are stables for livestock on the upper levels, animals brought underground. Along with the people, there are kitchens with carved hearths and ceilings blackened by ancient cooking smoke. There are storage rooms for food and oil and wine, enough, potentially, for a very long siege. There are communal rooms, chapels, even a large chamber, often described as a religious school. Everything a community needs to live, not for a night, but for weeks or months. So we arrive at the central question. You do not carve a city for 20,000 people into the rock 60 meters down as a hobby. It is an enormous, generational labor. Something drove these people underground. What? The mainstream answer is straightforward, and it is well supported. Central Anatolia, for thousands of years, was a highway of armies. It sat on the routes between great empires. Wave after wave of conquest and raiding swept across this plateau. Over the centuries, Persians, then later powers, then Arab raids, then others still. For the ordinary farming communities of Cappadocia, living on that open plateau meant living permanently exposed to soldiers, to slavers, to the simple arithmetic of being in the way. And the underground cities were the answer. When word came that an army was approaching, and on an open plateau, you would see the dust of an army for a long time. The people did not stand and fight. They could not win. Instead, they took their food, their animals, their children, and they went down. They rolled the great stone doors shut behind them, and they waited. An invading force would arrive at a village that was simply empty. No people, no livestock, no plunder, just abandoned houses. Above, a sealed, silent, invisible city full of hidden life. And here is where the ancient aliens crowd leans in close. And honestly, I understand the instinct, because the scale of Derinkuyu is so staggering, the labor so immense, that some look at it and ask, why dig down at all? Why not just build walls? The fringe reading reaches for dramatic answers, hiding from something in the sky, sheltering from a cosmic catastrophe, or from a danger stranger than any army. But notice, the grounded answer is not actually less dramatic. It is just more human. These people dug down because going underground worked. And enemy cannot besiege a city he cannot find. Let's go down and actually live there for a moment, because surviving inside a sealed underground city is not simple. Every basic human need becomes an engineering problem, and Derinkuyu solved every one of them. Air we have covered. The ventilation shafts kept it breathable. Water came from the deep wells, protected from poisoning above. Light came from oil lamps. And here, the design helps again. The niches carved into the walls held those lamps, and the lamps did more than light the dark. In a city with no sunlight, no day, no night, the burning of lamps and the management of fire also helped regulate the air. And the warmth and the temperature itself was an ally. Deep underground, the rock holds a stable temperature year-round, cool in summer, holding warmth in winter. The city was, in effect, climate controlled by the earth. Then there is food. The storage rooms of Derinkuyu could hold enough to outlast a raiding party. Grain, dried provisions, oil, wine. The stables meant fresh animals, and milk were on hand. A raiding force cannot wait forever. Raiders want speed, plunder, and a quick exit before any defending army arrives. A community that could simply outlast them underground, sealed, watered, fed, would, in time. Here, the raiders leave, and then, only then, roll back the stone and climb up into the light to a damaged village, perhaps, but to their own survival. But do not romanticize it. Living in Derinkuyu during a crisis would have been grim. Thousands of people, their animals, their lamps, their fires, packed into sealed rock with no daylight. For days or weeks, the air, even ventilated, would be thick. The dark would be total. Children would be born down there. The sick would suffer down there. The dead, there is evidence of underground burial spaces, would be laid to rest down there. Derinkuyu was not a marvel. Its people enjoyed. It was a marvel. Its people needed a measure of exactly how dangerous the world above could be. Now we come to the detail that lifts Derinkuyu from astonishing to almost unbelievable, because Derinkuyu is not a single, isolated refuge. It is part of a network. Cappadocia does not hide one underground city. It hides hundreds of underground settlements of varying sizes scattered across the region. And some of them are connected. Derinkuyu is linked by a long underground tunnel running for kilometers to another major underground city called Keimakli. Think about what that means. A passage long enough to walk between two hidden cities, entirely underground, without ever surfacing into the danger above. That connection changes the strategic picture completely. If one underground city were somehow discovered or breached, or became untenable, its population could move, could flow through the connecting tunnel to the next city. The network gave the people of Cappadocia not just a place to hide, but options, escape routes, fallback positions, an entire hidden geography running beneath the visible one. A second Cappadocia in the dark that an invader could march straight over and never know was there. And here is what that scale tells us. This was not improvised. You do not, in a panic, dig a kilometers-long tunnel between two cities. The Cappadocian underground network represents centuries, possibly millennia, of patient, organized, collective labor, generation after generation, adding rooms, deepening shafts, extending tunnels, passing down both the physical city and the knowledge of how to live in it. Derinkuyu is not a building. It is a tradition, a thousands-year-long agreement between countless human beings, most of whom never met, to dig themselves a way to survive. Before we close, there is one more thing, and it is the part of this story that is still being written. Derinkuyu itself was found by accident in 1963 by a man knocking down a wall. And here is the sobering thing. We still do not know how big it is. Roughly half of Derinkuyu, by many estimates, is open to visitors today. The rest remains unexcavated, blocked passages, collapsed sections, levels, and tunnels not yet cleared. Even the most famous underground city in the world has not fully shown itself, and the discoveries keep coming. In recent years, in the same Cappadocian region, surveys and construction work have revealed what may be even larger underground complexes, vast carved networks that were completely unknown, uncovered only when modern work happened to break through into them. One such site is so extensive that it may rank among the largest underground settlements ever found, which means the map of subterranean Cappadocia is not finished. It may not even be close. So sit with the real lesson here. A city for 20,000 people sat undiscovered beneath an ordinary Turkish town, beneath people's houses, beneath their streets. Until 1963, generations lived directly above Derinkuyu and had no idea it was there. How many more are still like that? How much of the human past is not lost to water, not lost to sand, but lost directly beneath our feet, sealed in the rock, waiting for someone to knock down the right wall. Here is what I keep coming back to. We tend to measure ancient civilizations by what they built upward, the pyramids, the temples, the towers that reach for the sky. We call that ambition. We call it greatness. But Derinkuyu is the opposite gesture. It is a civilization pouring the same staggering effort, the same generational labor, the same engineering genius, downward into the dark, not to be seen, not to be admired, but simply, desperately to survive. And that tells us something true about the deep human past. For most people, in most of history, life was not safe. the open plateau, the visible village, the world above ground could become lethal with the rising of dust on the horizon. And so people adapted with breathtaking ingenuity. They read their strange soft stone. They learned to dig. They built rolling doors and ventilation shafts and deep protected wells. They engineered. Underground, the one thing the surface could not promise them a way through the danger. Derinkuyu is not evidence of aliens. It is evidence of something more moving, human beings, ordinary ones, facing a violent world and refusing to simply die in it. They went down into the rock, and they took their children, their animals, their gods, and their hope down with them. Before history, beneath a quiet plateau in Turkey, a hidden city waited in the dark, and every stone of it was carved by the will to live. If this episode shifted something in your head about how much of the human past is hidden directly beneath us, about how recently a city for 20,000 people was simply stumbled upon, then know that Derinkuyu is only one buried place among many. Underground cities, sealed tunnels, hidden refuges, carved beneath the modern world, an entire subterranean inheritance, most of it unmapped, waiting behind the right wall. If you want to come along as we dig down into what was buried, subscribe to Before History, because the further back we look, the more the ground beneath our feet turns out to be hollow. See you in the next one. Yes, embedded in closing vow. No cadence promise.